Hey guys, it's Michelle, Cozyegg, and today is Monday, June 10th, 2019. This is episode 75. So, thanks for joining me. If you are returning, I appreciate you coming back, and if you are new, welcome. I appreciate your subscribes and likes and comments and all that good stuff. So, let's get started because I have, as usual, a bunch to show you. So just a little bit life update, I guess. I still have my cough from a month ago. So hopefully that won't be a big deal while I'm recording, but I feel fine. I just have this cough still. So it's kind of now to that point that I probably need to go to the doctor. So I've been continuing on with magical stitches. So I have bunches to show you on that. And I don't know what else. So the past few weekends, Eric and I have been working on deep cleaning the house, which is about my least favorite thing to do ever. But, other than make a phone call. But, so we've been working on that. So, we started with the upstairs with the master bedroom, master bathroom. Then we did our stairway, entryway, dining room. And, it's something that we try to do twice a year, to just freshen everything up, get all of those, corners and baseboards and move furniture and vacuum under things, all that good stuff. And like I said, it's about my least favorite thing to do, but after it's done, it feels so good. And the thing that I noticed, and I posted about this yesterday on Instagram, but the thing that I'm really noticing is that it seems like just doing that and moving things around and cleaning kind of re-energizes the house, because it felt like the energy in the house has just been so stagnant, which is kind of how I've been feeling. So moving things around and, I don't know, stirring up the energy seems to just have made a really big difference already. We're not done with everything that we need to do. We still have, basically most of the downstairs still left to do. And of course that includes like the kitchen and the living room, which are going to be difficult. But we still have some to do, but it's really making a big difference. So I'm glad that we're doing it. And I hope that, moving that energy around and getting things sort of unblocked in the house will actually help me too. And so one of the things that kind of, ties into that is recently at my quilt guild, recently, it may have been 2 months ago, we had a couple of ladies come and speak, and of course I'm unprepared, so I don't even have their, Allie and Cece. Okay, so they came to talk to us about kind of, your quilt whips and, trying to sort of organize and start figuring out a way to move forward with your pieces, with your works in progress. And so it was a really good presentation, and as part of that, our quilt guild decided to have a challenge for our UFOs. And so they gave us, you know, this little sheet, which is you earn points for different things that you do. And so, like, the first thing is just to make a list of all of your projects. So I actually started doing that, and my quilt whips, I was just going to see if I could find where I started that in my bullet journal. My quilt whips have been, yes. So this is my quilt whips. And then I started making a list of closet projects. So my quilt whips seem to be, I have them sort of squirreled in a couple of different places. One is underneath my sewing table. I have some, you know, buckets there, and that's where I keep a bunch of my quilt whips. So I went through all of those buckets, and that's what this list is. Some of what's on this list are not actually whips. They are things that I have, you know, all of the fabric that I have kitted, ready to go, but have not yet been started. So I did go ahead and list them here, but they're not technically whips. In the way that they're using the term UFO, they're really talking about unfinished objects. So anything that's unfinished. You know, it tends to be in the stitching world, we tend to refer to whips as things that you're sort of actively working on, and then UFOs as things that you have either abandoned or haven't worked on in a very long time. But they're using the term UFO to kind of cover anything that's a whip that's still sort of hanging around, that started but unfinished. So the other place that I keep my quilt whips is in my craft closet. I have not ventured in there yet because my quilt whips are farther back in the closet. So that requires me taking things out that are closer to the front to get to them. So I haven't done that yet. But it's something that I want to do, and not only for the challenge, but I think I need to get a handle on what all do I have. So, so the first thing was to make an inventory of all of your projects. Then you get points for sharing that list on social media. And then it's about moving things forward a step. And I'll explain that here in a minute. So you would get points for each thing that you moved forward a step, like each step that you move something forward. And then you can bring a finished item to show, and you get points for having finished something. If you decide that you want to donate one of your UFOs to a charity project, you get points for that. So that's one of the things that they talked about was, you know, really taking a hard look at your unfinished quilt whips and deciding, is this even something I want to finish? And if it's not, can I, you know, take the pieces and repurpose it? Can I give it away? Can I sell it? Can I go ahead and finish it but turn it into, you know, something for a charity quilt or a gift, you know? So there's all sorts of things like that you can look at. And so the reason that I'm going into this, not only because it's something that I'm working on, but I think it also translates to your stitching whips, right? So they also gave us this sheet, and it's a two-sided sheet in case you have 50 whips or unfinished objects. And so basically the way that they laid it out was that you have your project name. If you have a priority or a due date on it, you can put that there. And then they have kind of the steps that you would need, you know, to take so that you can identify what step you're at with your project, and then, you know, what steps are left in order to get it completed. And then you have kind of a notes field. So for quilts, obviously it's, you know, the initial cutting of your fabric, piecing it, putting it together into a quilt top, doing the backing fabric, basting it, quilting it, binding it, label it, done. So that way you can start to look at not only what do I have, but where is it in the process? And then you can start to look at, okay, I have this that I've started cutting. I need to finish cutting so I can start piecing, so that you can move that thing one step forward. Or if you start to look at, I've got things that are pretty close to done, maybe I can just start knocking them out. So that's something that I'm going to be working on, that was sort of inspired by the program that we had at Quilt Guild. But then also, you know, of course, I spent a lot of time and energy talking about my stitching whips and organizing that and trying to figure out how to, you know, cut down on the amount of whips that I have and all that good stuff. And I've been talking a lot with Diana, It Is Kismet Stitches, and you know, one of the things that we were talking about is basically, you know, doing the same thing and with my stitching whips, and looking at, just because I've started it really doesn't mean that I have to finish it. And that if I have pieces that I'm not in love with anymore, that I'm not really energized and excited about finishing, I can get rid of them. I can give myself permission to get rid of them. And maybe it's just that I don't like the fabric that I started on, so I need to just cut my losses and, you know, restart it on a fabric that I'm gonna enjoy and enjoy stitching on. So I'm going to be taking a hard look at my whips too. You know, as she and I were having that conversation, I could already think of 3 or 4 stitching whips just right off the bat that I'm like, I don't even have any interest in finishing that. You know, there's that part of me that feels like I started it, I need to finish it. But, you know, the reality is it's probably never going to get finished, because I don't want to work on it. So if it's not ever going to get finished, there's no need for me to keep hanging on to it. So, and as I was, you know, thinking about the energy in my house the other day and kind of stirring up that energy, and, you know, thinking about feng shui, and I was actually explaining to someone what feng shui is, you know, I realized that, you know, one of the principles is all about clutter and having stuff, you know, that your energy is hung up in. And so I'm definitely feeling like it's time to start being brutal and start to cut down some of those whips, and, you know, determine, am I ever gonna stitch this? Am I gonna finish this? Do I love it? Nope. Then I'm done with it. It can go. So that's gonna be a big undertaking, probably, because as I mentioned, my quilt whips are kind of out of hand and squirreled away in 2 different places. So my stitching whips are actually worse, if you can believe it. And then I've got knitting whips on top of it. So yeah, I need to get I need to get a handle on it for my own mental state. Because I'd really sorry, I'd really love to be able to let go of those things that aren't making me happy anymore, and that are giving me, you know, that are creating guilt and whatever, because, oh my God, I spent so much money on the fabric and the silks and this and that, and I've spent all this time, blah, 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 whatever. Done. All right. So if you have any thoughts on the subject, love to hear it. Let's get started on getting through what I have to talk to you about today, shall we? All right, so I'm going to do kind of like I did last time. I'm going to try to go chronologically because it's the easiest way for me to sort through all of this that I have going on. So, we're going to start with, so last time I talked to you, it was the 13th of May. So I talked about dark 13 stitching. And what was I working on? Blacked Sky. So let me find Blacked Sky, which is in my Mama Joan Sugar Skull bag. So, and this is what it looks like. Primitive needle, Blacked Sky, long out of print. I am stitching it with the called for Pure Palette silks that are super fun. And it also does call for a couple of silken colors, silks. So, and Becky, Socks for Mom, commented on my last video and said, when you click your tongue like that, it makes me feel like I'm a horse and you're telling me to get a move on, which is funny because I totally don't even realize I'm doing it. But I think I just did it. So anyway, here is Blacked Sky. Pardon the wrinkles. So, for Magical Stitches homework, or actually, I think I worked on extra credit. Yep, I was doing extra credit, so it was 500 stitches on a piece that had words. This has words, as you can see. Not just letters, it had to have words. So I was going to work on block 2, which is this block. And so the first thing that I had to do was I had to rip out this right here. I had stitched all of those diamonds and I had started on the black around it. This is the block that I realized was a stitch too short. So because of a mistake I made on block 1. So the way that I fixed that was that instead of having a row between like her feet and this row of black surrounding the diamonds, I just put her in the memorial and the urn right on it so that I could have a 1-line gap between that and the border, because I wanted to keep that gap there. So it did require ripping out, but it actually went pretty quickly. So I ripped that out, restitched it, restitched the diamonds, stitched all of the black around it, and then I think I had a little bit of tree that I had to finish once I determined how I was going to fix that. So that got me my 500 stitches, and this block is done. Super, super happy with how that turned out. And so then we had a pop-up event, and so I decided I have this out. Why don't I just start on block 2? And we only had to do 50 stitches at block 3. Sorry, this is actually block 4 because block 3 is over here. Block 4. So we only had to stitch 50 stitches. And so I had already done the frame for this one. Hopefully I counted it right. So I did this little jiggity jig zigzaggy border up here, and that was 50 stitches. It was like 54 stitches or something. So boom, done. And the exciting part about that is that I got to use a new thread. I don't know about you guys, but when I get to use a new thread that has not been used in a design before, I'm super excited. So the color is Sedona Hills. And it's kind of this beautiful, rusty, orangey, rusty color. Isn't that pretty? So I got to use that, which I was excited about. So I still have two that haven't been used yet. But I think they might get used in this block. We'll see. So, as always, I love working on this piece. I love this piece so much. And I'm stitching it on the called for 40 count vintage pair by Lakeside. Called for silks, called for fabric. The mistakes are all my own. So, I love it, love it, love it. And you know what's funny is that some projects, when we get an assignment to do 500 stitches or something, it's a slog, and it takes me a long time to get through 500 stitches. Blacked Sky, it's like 2 nights, boom, 500 stitches done. It's crazy. So, so that was the first thing I worked on, and so that was for extra credit, and then for that pop-up event. I don't even remember what the pop-up event was for, because that was a month ago. So then we started in on year 4. So May and June are year 4 in Magical Stitches, and this was week 2 for the Tri-Wizard tournament. So I talked about this in my last video. So it was, we had to post a list of 20 or less whips so that they could, use them for some of the challenges or some of the homework. So this was pick your 17th, take your 17th whip on your list and put 700 stitches in that. So I did that, and my Colonial Garden's still in here. This is a new project bag that was made for me. That was a fun gift. And so the potion bottles on the back are like dragon scale and slug juice and kraken oil and skelegro potion, goblin gas, all that good stuff, basilisk venom. And then on the inside, get it to where you can see it, it's also got Harry Potter fabric. Isn't that fun? I love it. So I immediately had to put my stuff in it. So, oh, well, I'll show that in a minute. So, my 17th whip was From the Deep by Plum Street Samplers, and you may recall that I'm just stitching a part of this piece. So it's got words at the top and then a mermaid at the bottom. So I'm just stitching the mermaid at the bottom. And so here's where I'm at. I'm doing this on lamb's wool, which sucks, which is why I have to put paper behind it because you can see through it totally. But, let's see. Anyway, so, mermaid. The last time you saw her, I had like her head done and her hair done, and that was about it. So, 700 stitches got me a long way on this piece, a long way. And I'm really happy how it's looking, like really thrilled with it. And I like the colors. I love her tail. I love her hair. It's just a lot of fun. And so you note the circle that I have basted there. So I actually have a circular frame that she is going to go in. And so I had I drew a template of what's gonna, what will fit inside that frame. And so I just basted, around that template so that I could get a feel for where my stitching needed to stop, because this is full coverage. So once I get the rest of the seaweed in, then the whole background is stitched with kind of a grayish blue. So I wanted to know exactly where I needed to be in order to get her in the right spot and, not stitch stuff that I don't need to stitch. So super happy with how she looks. And I've got some more seaweed to do and then the background water. But 700 stitches, like I said, gets you a long way. So really love her. But because everything is so, there's a lot of counting, and so it takes me a while to stitch on this. So I worked on her and got my homework done. I should probably leave out Colonial Garden so I can do something more appropriate with that. And so I went on a quilt retreat, like I guess it was the weekend before Memorial Day weekend. And this was our in-town retreat that we do, that where we go for 3 days, and we're there like from 9 in the morning until 9 at night, and then we go home, and then Saturday and Sunday. So we go Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and so our hostess for the weekend made us each these fun mug rugs out of hexes. And so mine was made out of Tula Pink Chipper, which I just love, and I love how she fussy cut that center there. And then the other side has some more chipper on it as well. So fun. I just love it. So I had it in my bag so that I remembered to show it, but now it's going to be used. So I had to show you that. And so for the quilt retreat, I typically have been, working on a quilt whip. That's really what I'm there for. But this time I was like, you know what? I finished my Foxtails quilt top last time. I didn't really feel like starting a new quilt, and the ones that I had already started, all kind of needed decisions or, something along those lines. So I was like, I don't even think that I'm going to bring a quilt to work on. So I brought my homework and did some stitching on that. And there were some other ladies in our group that were also stitching. So that was easy enough. I mean, you can work on whatever you feel like working on while you're there. But it is traditionally set up as a quilt retreat. So what I decided to do was to bring some things that have that needed attention, that needed to be finished. And I thought I'm just going to have kind of an FFO weekend and try to get some things done that were on my big list. So the first thing that I did was, I think I showed this, I don't remember, but this is a sew together bag. And I made this at one of our quilt retreats a while back. And two other friends, the three of us together worked on these because we needed the moral support. So I had bought the kit with all of the Tula Pink fabrics back at Houston Quilt Show forever ago. And so finally I got around to using it. So, but the reason that I got this back out, because I made this a while ago, but the reason I got it back out is that when I finished it, and I started I got it back out to start using it, I realized that, under here, where you have to sew the body of the bag to this binding, which also attaches to your zipper, I hadn't caught all of my fabric in that seam. And so I had kind of, loose fabric right here on both sides. So it required me taking those seams out and then re-sewing it. And I still have one spot that there just wasn't any way for me to catch that fabric without creating a bigger problem. So I do still have one spot that it's not caught on, but the rest of it is fine. In case you haven't seen this before, so you have this big zipper that, of course, also that works as a handle. You can see the fabric that's used here are those static dots. This is all from Moonshine. And then on the inside, you've got 3 zippered pockets, and I have one fabric here, another fabric here, which is also more of those static dots, fabric here, and then a fabric here, and this is the deer. Isn't that cute? And I just did different colored zippers. You pick your own zippers. And then it's got a different fabric in here than on the outside. And then on the inside of my pockets, they all have this star fabric that I just love. It's one of my favorite fabrics. So, and actually I think that is from Foxfield, if I'm not mistaken. So this bag holds a ton of stuff, as you can imagine, and it's got all these. There's a dog in my yard. Since I don't have a dog, I'm wondering why there's a dog in my yard. Anyway, but with all those pockets, it's got a ton of room to hold stuff. So I was happy to finally get that fixed as much as it could be fixed, so that now I can actually use it. So I have that. And then the next thing I did was, you may or may not remember this also. So I made this mini quilt out of Tula Pink Elizabeth fabric. And so one of our quilting weekends, I sewed this together, quilted it, and I sewed the binding on the front. And so all that was left was to hand sew down the binding on the back. And it has been literally sitting for months without that binding sewn on. So I used that weekend and sewed my binding on. So now it's totally done. And I'm very happy with it. And I can actually now enjoy it, and it doesn't have to live in the closet anymore. And it does have Tula Pink's signature on it. I had her sign my fabric, so. Another project finished and out of the closet. Then the next thing that I worked on is I had started doing some finishing on some pieces that I wanted to make into little pin cushions or dough bowl pillows. A while ago, I cut them, put some interfacing on the inside, sewed them up, filled them with walnut shells, and then all I had left was to sew them closed. And these people just need to go in their house. They're distracting me. I have new neighbors. So all that was left was to sew the opening closed. And they've literally been sitting in the closet for weeks like that. Possibly months, but I'm gonna say weeks. So I brought them with me and I took the 5 minutes and sewed the openings closed. So here is my Nevermore Raven that I stitched for the EAP SAL, Edgar Allan Poe SAL, that was going on in a group that will not be named. And I love this guy. I had so much fun stitching him. I did make a color change to where it says Nevermore. This is fabric I dyed myself. I put star fabric on the back because I love stars. And now he's done and I can enjoy him. And I'm so, so happy to have him done. I also did my cemetery block. So this is the block that I stitched on my round robin, which was on the original round robin that was kept and then eventually months and months and months later returned with no explanation, but whatever. But by that time I'd started a new one. So I cut this up and made it into a pillow because I didn't want to waste the stitching. So this is a block from Village of Hawk Run Hollow. I flipped it because I wanted the tree to go in the opposite direction because of where it was on my piece. But, and obviously this is the one that has all of the black background. Obviously I didn't do that, so I did my bats in black. But yeah, there's my little signature. And I'm super happy with that. And I used this fabric on the back, filled it with walnut shells. And now I have another pillow for my non-existent dough bowl. And then the last piece that I finished, which I almost talked myself out of finishing because I was like, I haven't even interfaced it, I haven't even cut it, but I was like, this is dumb, I need to just do it. So I cut it out and interfaced it and sewed it and filled it up with walnut shells and sewed it closed right then, and boom, it was done. So this is my Yule piece that I stitched I think at the end of last year. This is a freebie design from Primitive Hair, and I've seen this done in all in one color and it looks fantastic. This is the second time I've stitched this and I love how it came out. And on the back I put this plaid flannel that I had, which I just love. So finished. So happy. Yeah. So I feel really good about getting those things that were almost done, completely done. And so now not only do they not have to live in the closet anymore, but they're off my list of closet projects. They're off my lists of things that need to be finished. And now I can just enjoy them. Go figure. So FFO'd all of those, worked on From the Deep a little bit, and that was pretty much what I did. I did start another project, small project. So there is, it's a free pattern for, it's called an undercover maker's mat, and I will put a picture of it here. So I thought it would be really cool, and the picture I'm going to show you is one that was done in Tula Pink Nightshade fabric, and I thought, ooh, it would be really cool to do one in Tula Pink Nightshade fabric since I just finished my Nightshade quilt. But I also kind of love the Parisville fabric, and I couldn't decide between them, and so I decided to use both. So I'm going to do one side with Parisville fabric and one side with Nightshade fabric. And so I got started on making the Nightshade side. You know, I wasn't really trying to push to get anything finished, but I worked on, you know, I worked on some of the pockets, I worked on the background, you know, that's what I did. And at some point, maybe next time I go, I'll work on it some more. But I'm not in any huge rush to push through that. And the other thing that I did was some ladies that I know from Quilt Guild were doing they decided that they wanted to do a postage stamp quilt. And so basically they used like 2.5-inch squares, and they wanted every square of fabric that they used in their quilt to be different. So what they did was they each cut a certain number of squares out of, you know, however many fabrics. So let's say that they did 200. So 200 different fabrics. And so they cut enough for themselves and then however many other, you know, 3 or 4 other ladies. And then they swapped so that they each had, you know, 200 of their own fabrics, 200 from this person, 200 from this person, 200 from this person. So they got a good variety, which I thought was really cool. And I was really sad that that I didn't have, you know, a bunch of friends willing to cut 200 fabrics. Nor do I have 200 fabrics of my own that I could have cut, so it's not like I could have participated anyway. But point being, I really loved the idea and I really want to make a postage stamp quilt now. So while I was at the retreat, I started cutting 2.5-inch squares. And so what I did was I took all of my Tula Pink scraps that have come from, you know, projects that I've worked on or other people have given me their scraps, and so I just started cutting 2.5-inch squares out of anything that I could, you know, get that out of. So I've started myself a little pile of postage stamp squares, and I'm hoping that over time I can just, you know, eventually start cutting some more, and in, you know, 15 or 20 years I'll have enough to make a quilt. So that's my plan anyway. But I really wanted it to be, I'd really love for it to be modern fabrics. While I love, you know, super scrappy quilts, you know, I have a couple that are, you know, scrappy like that, that are just whatever kind of fabric. And I just really would like to have a postage stamp quilt that's primarily modern fabrics. So that's my plan. So I started on that, and then that was basically the end of the quilt retreat. So let's get moving on to more whips. So year 4, week 3 homework was meet the challengers. And so since we're doing the Tri-Wizard tournament, we had to do, I think it was like 200 stitches in red for Harry, 200 stitches in yellow for Cedric, 200 stitches in blue for Beaubaton, 200 stitches in brown for Durmstrang, and then you could stitch an extra 200 stitches in the challenger color of your choice. So I decided that it was the perfect opportunity to work on the crown bird, because red. So I got this out, and it now has a new needle binder on it because bird. So I got this out, and so I did my 200 stitches in red for Harry, but then I also did a second set of 200 stitches for Harry as my favorite challenger, mostly because I wanted to stitch more red. So here's where I'm at, and I am now at the point where I absolutely love this. Love it. So I basically stitched these 2 flowers, this crown, and then these little berries that are in a basket. So that's basically what I did with my 400 red stitches. And then I figured, while I have it, I'll do my 200 for Cedric. So then I stitched some yellow stitches. So I outlined each of those flowers and then did the center, and then started on that basket, or the vase down at the bottom, urn. I really enjoyed working on this a lot, and I was a little sad to put it away. And I was a little sad that there was no green challenger, because that would have been perfect, because everything I have is like green. I needed to do seaweed, I had green vine, there was all sorts of green that I could have stitched, but no. But I was really happy to get my red done, and really happy with how that's looking. So 600 stitches into the crowned bird, which I am super happy with. And then I decided, okay, I think, because I was struggling on something with brown, so I decided to get out the Mary Pearson sampler Momly bag. And the Mary Pearson sampler, you may recall, is the one for the workshop that Beth twisted. And so I realized that I had been working my way up to Adam and Eve on this piece. So I'd stitched those words previously and I'd stitched Adam and Eve. So what I did for my brown stitches, to get this more manageable, is I stitched this tree. So that was 200 stitches on this brown tree. I did go ahead and stitch the green grass just to give myself, you know, a comfort level that I was putting my tree in the right place. And those didn't count for anything. But I did my brown tree, 200 stitches, got it done. And I was, you know, that morning I had planned out, okay, I can do my 200 stitches in brown, I can do that brown tree, and then I could do my 200 blue stitches on Frances Eden because the words are in blue and I'm almost down to the words, so no problem there. And so I'm stitching along that night on my tree and I'm like, I got this. I can finish this up, you know, tomorrow night, no problem, and then do my 200 stitches in blue tomorrow night. So I'm stitching away, stitching away, stitching away. And it was after midnight. And all of a sudden I looked up at the clock and realized tonight's Sunday. Like I was told, this was Memorial Day weekend, so I was totally thrown off. And I kept thinking that it was Saturday and that I had another day to finish my homework. And homework is typically due on Sunday night, and it used to be due at midnight Pacific, which is 2 a.m. my time. Well, they rolled it back to midnight Central Time. So there I was stitching along and realized it's not Saturday, it's Sunday. So I don't have tomorrow night to do my blue stitches. And it's now after midnight. So these 200 brown stitches that I just did didn't count for squat. Sad, sad, sad. But I got a little more stitching in on Mary Pearson, so there's that. And just as a reminder, here's what this piece looks like. So I'm working right here. Sad, sad, sad. Anyway, so, and they have changed the rules a little bit, and so they do, you know, they will give you partial credit. So had I realized what time it was and that it was Sunday, I could have posted what I had stitched. And so even if it wasn't 200 stitches, I could have gotten partial credit for 100 stitches or 150 stitches or whatever. But I totally didn't realize what time it was, so I never posted anything. So, oh well. But my red stitches and my yellow stitches did count. So there's that. So, and the other thing that happened that week was that I had a migraine for 2 days. So I kind of lost 2 days in there someplace. which also threw me off. And then it was, you know, Memorial Day. So Memorial Day, because it was a Monday, started a new week for homework. And so that day, Eric and I, we've been rewatching Game of Thrones from the beginning. So I've not seen the last season because I wanted to rewatch all of it before I watched the last season. So we've been rewatching it, and so on Memorial Day, we pretty much just took a day and hung out. We watched Game of Thrones, I stitched, and we didn't do a whole lot of anything. It was the perfect day. I need more days like that. So we finished up season 5 and we started on season 6. And I started a new blog on Anniversaries of the Heart. So, what I decided that I wanted to do, since I had like kind of a whole day of stitching, is I decided to do one of the extra credit pieces, extra credit tasks. And there was one for it's use something where the project starts with one of the letters in the word goblet. And so I was using E. So I decided to start the next block on Anniversaries of the Heart, which is Evergreen Lane. So this is block 11, which is the November block. And this is what it looks like. So I started this on Memorial Day. And I worked on it for the 500 stitches for extra credit and got that completed. And then that week's homework was for SPEW, S-P-E-W. And so we had to choose projects or designers that fit those letters. And so I also used this for E, for Evergreen Lane. And so I stitched another, I think it was 200 stitches on this for that also. And then I stitched on it for this past week's homework, which was, it was, you know, use your project to tell a story about how you would get past the dragon in order to capture the egg as part of, is the first task in the Triwizard Tournament. So I was pretty much going to make up any story that I could to keep going on Anniversaries of the Heart, because Diana, It Is Kismet Stitches, and Emily, Eclectic Possessions, have challenged me to get this done by the end of summer. So this is my focus project. So I did 1,000 stitches on this last week. And then finished up my 1,000 stitches on Friday and decided I still have 2 more days in the week. So I'm going to do another extra credit assignment, which was stitch on something that lays eggs, and there's birds in this that lay eggs. So I did another 200 stitches on that. So I put a whole bunch of stitches in this since I started it on Memorial Day. So here's where I'm at. So Memorial Day, I basically got this outside border done. And then I've done around the cartouche here at the bottom. I've done the 2 trees, and I've been working on the house, and I'm actually in the process of filling in the house. And you may notice that this looks a little bit different than the original, And the reason being is that this block is going to represent my sister and Eric's sister. They both have birthdays in November. But I didn't want to put both of their names in this block because I didn't, you know, I wanted them to be separate. I didn't want them to look like they were together. So I'm going to put my sister's name and her birth date here in the bottom. And then what I did was I made this box smaller since I'm only going to have one name in here, as opposed to on the actual block, they put two names and when they wed. So I made this block smaller, or this, you know, thing, and then move the house down so that I have room up at the top, and I'm going to put Eric's sister's information up at the top. So I had to kind of re-chart that a little bit, but I think it's going to work out and be good. So that's a whole lot of stitching on this block in the past couple of weeks. And I am also going to use this for this week's homework as well. So this week was task 2, the Black Lake, and basically the house elves took your favorite project and hid it in the lake, and you have to go and retrieve it by stitching 1,000 stitches on it. So we're calling this my favorite project, and I'm going to put another 1,000 stitches in on it. So I would really like to get this block done this week. It's going to be kind of a hard push, but I would really like to get this block done this week. So that I can just move on. So, getting there. So this is block 11. I have block 12 to do, but then there is a double block that's the bonus block that goes at the end. And if you give me a minute, I'll show you what that bonus block looks like. This is in my Liberty project bag. So the bonus block, so here's block 12. And then here's the bonus block. So that bonus block is basically the equivalent size of 2 regular blocks. So I essentially have 3 blocks left, the bonus and then block 12. But I think if I keep at it and really focus on it, I can get it done. My goal is to start something new for my birthday, which is near the end of August. So I want this done before then. So that's where I'm at. Anniversaries of the Heart. And I'm, for the most part, using the called for threads. This is one of those that there's 2 different reds. One is Calico Kitty and one is something else. Both Classic Colorworks, both the exact same flippin' color. So I'm not even bothering to switch between the 2. I'm just using one. Because the red roof there is actually one thread and the red below it is a different thread. Look the same. So anyway, and this is on 40 count vintage exemplar Lakeside linen. So if my stack gets so high that it starts to cover the camera, it'll be time to stop, I guess. All right, so let's rewind and go back to spew homework. I decided to work on Sampler Sisters for S, and because it's by the Primitive Needle, it also worked for P. So I'm trying to do the Michelle Bendy and use something for as many different project assignments as possible, so that I'm not just constantly switching projects, although when I'm showing you a month's worth, it does look that way. So here's where I'm at on Sampler Sisters. So you may recall I started from the bottom, I'm working my way up. This is on the called for 40 count mellow. I picture this plus using the called for threads. And this is basically what I worked on. So I did this vase of flowers, this hand, rabbit, heart, this little star. I started on this vase and the needle. So I use that for 2 tasks. And I love this piece. I really enjoy stitching on it. It's a lot of fun. My only issue is that one of my threads Weeks charcoal. That's all I have left. So, yeah, I probably should replace that. I keep thinking that it's bark that I'm running out of, but it's not. It's charcoal. So, and I think the last time I tried to replace it was like in October, and I went to my LNS, and like every black overdyed thread they were out of. Coal, charcoal, raven, carriage black, like every black they were out of. It was the weirdest thing. It made me darn proud, but the weirdest thing. So, and here is a picture of Sampler Sisters. Sometimes I don't have my originals in with my bag, but I try to remember to show you when I do. So this is Primitive Needle, Sampler Sisters of the Thread. There's the piece. So I'm working right here. So, fun. And I really love stitching on that piece. This is one of my Stitch 9 challenge pieces. So is Blacked Sky, so is Anniversaries of the Heart. So I'm trying to kind of stay within, you know, some of the stuff. All right, so for E, I used Evergreen Lane. And then for W, I was really struggling with what to use for W. And I am, unlike every other stitcher in the world, that I do not really have any with Thy Needle and Thread projects. I think I have one, but it's buried and I wasn't digging it out. So I decided, aha, I have a chatelaine. And chatelaines are designed by Martina Weber. Of course, someone then reminded me that she got married and changed her name. But at the time that she designed this, she was Weber, so I totally used it. So this is also in a Momly bag, Egypt appropriate. This is Egypt Garden, which I have not worked on in a while. So it was fun to get this out as well. And I appropriately used one of my new needle minders. So I am still working on the center, but you can see the sparkle from that metallic Petite Treasure braid. So I worked in here, and I did a lot of over one stitching. I did some fill-in, with the exception of some over one metallic that I still need to do. This center is done. The area inside here and the area on these corners is all beaded. So none of that's gonna get filled in. But these little fish are really cool looking and sparkly. And so then I started working on the outside of the center block. So a couple hundred stitches, most of them over one. But I was glad to finally get some color into this, get that blue in there. And I've started working on the lotus flowers that are going to surround that. So, and I'm doing this on Silkweaver Days Gone By. This is old Silkweaver. Old Silkweaver. I wanted it to look like sand. So I worked on that and actually finished my 200 stitches or whatever I needed to do, and so I decided that I would use it for an extra credit, so I kept going. And I'm just going to show you this from back here so that you can kind of get a sense of it. So this is the center that I'm working on, and this is the outside corner. So there's a lot that happens in between the center and this outside corner. Some really pretty things, but and if you want to see what one looks like that is done or pretty close to done, here at the house on Instagram has been stitching this, and hers is gorgeous. Gorgeous. Like the pyramids that are in those outside corners are all beaded almost. They're so pretty. So yeah. So I had fun stitching on this, and it was, you know, it was something different. But I was happy to get it back out. I did not finish that extra credit, so I'll need to get this back out before the end of June to finish up that extra credit. So that's all that I worked on stitching wise. I still have a couple other things I want to show you though. I hope you got a big cup of coffee before you sat down. All right. So a little bit of haul. Not much, but a little bit. I did get this chart from Blackbird Designs, Our Lasting Friendship. A friend of mine and I are going to do a stitch along of this piece, and we are planning on like each stitching on each other's piece, which I think will be fun. So this is the one we're gonna stitch. So I think that will be super fun. It calls for, I don't have the fabric or anything for it, it calls for 36 count legacy. I will probably do it on 40. And then of course, oh my God, it calls for Classic Colorworks. And 2 weeks. We'll see. But I think it's really pretty. Different-ish with those cartouches in the middle. So anyway, so we're planning on doing that sometime this summer. And Recently, Kitten Stitcher on her channel talked about how she and Jen from Jen's Stitching Niche are going to do a project bag exchange every month where they make each other a project bag, which I thought was super fun. And so a friend of mine suggested that we do this as well, but do like maybe every other month. So we're not going to get crazy because I don't have time for crazy. So while we were at the quilting retreat, I bought a couple of fat quarters so that I could make a project bag for her. And so I decided to get some Tula Pink Pinkerville fabric. And so for her bag, I got the unicorn in the pink colorway. She loves pink. And then I'm gonna try my hand at a vinyl front bag. We'll see how it goes. And then I got this for the inside. I think that'll be really pretty. So I'm gonna do this for her bag. And then I'm gonna make myself one. And so I got the kind of blue purple colorway. Boy, that really is reading neon, isn't it? And then I got this to go on the inside, which I just love. So I thought that would be really pretty. So I think these will be good. And then we can have Pinkerville project bags. So that will be super fun. And then at Quilt Guild last month, we had a little carnival with some carnival games, and the prizes that they gave out were these little Moda candies. So they're 2.5-inch blocks, and this one is Urban Cottage by Urban Chicks, so it's all black and whites and grays. And then this one is called Cheeky, and it's got some fun reds and greens. This is a Christmas one called To Be Jolly. More To Be Jolly, more Cheeky, and then Farm Fresh. So, remember me talking about my postage stamp quilt? Obviously, these will have, you know, since I've got doubles of a couple of these, I won't need all of them for my postage stamp quilt, but they will certainly help me get a little farther along with some fun modern fabrics. So I'm very excited about that. So that'll get me a little farther on postage stamp quilt. And then the other thing is I did get out, for the first time in forever, I did get out my Hex on the Beach quilt. This is English paper piecing. And so Diana and I had talked about, you know, doing just like 30 minutes a day of English paper piecing. And so I've done that the past couple of nights. So here's where I'm at. And I've got 8 rows put together. The whole quilt is 40 rows. And I just finished putting row 8 on, which I'm thrilled about because it's been in progress forever. So I got row 8 put on night before last. And then last night I started putting the next row together. Oh, here it is. So I just got 4 sewn together, but that's 4 more than I had. So I'm enjoying working on this and just doing a little bit. So I'm going to keep doing that and see if I can maybe get this moved further along, maybe even closer to a finish. So I think that's all I've got. Oh no, the most important thing that I completely forgot about, the giveaway. So last time I mentioned that I got another copy of this Tula Pink quilt book, and I asked people to tell me their favorite Tula Pink line. I had a few responders, which was fun reading their different favorite line. So I did the random number generator, and Nina is the winner of this. So I will be leaving Nina a comment, and this will then be on its way to her. So I hope you enjoy it. Nina said that her favorite was Tabby Road, but that she just finished a quilt with Zuma. So I'm super jealous. So congratulations, Nina, and thanks everybody for entering. That was fun. I haven't had a giveaway in a while, so that was fun to do. I'm really glad I got to do it. So, congrats, Nina. And then the only other thing, I did finally finish reading Prisoner of Azkaban, and so I have started Goblet of Fire, and I am barely in there. I forgot how big this big book is. Totally forgot, but I'm excited to be reading it, enjoy it. And I have to tell you that after rewatching the Game of Thrones seasons, I'm really wanting to read the books. Like, I've read book 1. I'm feeling like I need to reread it. But now I'm really interested to read the other books. So after I finish with Harry Potter, I may do that. All right, that's really it. I know that was a lot. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got a lot of stitching in. I will probably be back same time next month, and I will hopefully have a huge dent in Anniversaries of the Heart that I can show you. And we'll see what other shenanigans I get up to. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for joining. And as always, I appreciate you liking and subscribing and commenting and all that good stuff. Really, really appreciate it. And all right, that's it for me. Thanks, guys. Happy stitching.